This is really weird. It is kind of eerie out. It's Sunday morning. It's 7:47 right now, and we're supposed to do online church today because everything is closed down, and it's super weird, and it's never happened before. I mean, I feel like it should be a snow day because the only other time we've canceled church is for like blizzard conditions. But I don't know, it's just weird. But I feel like maybe the enemy is at work trying to make sure that the message for today doesn't get out. That the message that people resonate with is the message of fear, of anxiety, and I don't know. Despair is not the right word, but almost like this searching for where is God and where is He in the midst of this situation. And I know several of you are going through things that this whole situation that's going on, it just makes it difficult. But for some of you, some of you are excited because you get out of school now. You get a little bit of an extended break, even though I know a lot of you have online learning you still have to do. But man, it's just weird having church this way. It's weird giving a lesson this way. But I should probably give a disclaimer. Today's message is week 2 of None of Your Business, which is for the middle school series. And in the series, we are talking about PG-13 related things. Last week, we talked about how God created sex, and it's good, but it's powerful. And we talked about the implications of that a little bit. Today, we're going to continue along those lines. So this is, parents, if you're watching, if you've got young kids in the room, this is the warning for you that we are in the middle of this series. And if you didn't get that information, make sure that you check your email or make sure you subscribe to our parent email so you can see exactly what's coming before we talk about it. But today is it's interesting. It's ironic because today the topic is about technology, and it's not about porn. We're gonna get a little more in the weeds on that next week. But the idea that technology is powerful and technology can be really good. And the case in point, we're able to still have lessons and still get the message out for today because of technology. And that's super awesome. But sometimes the technology isn't awesome. I'm gonna get out of this door. It's cold. Hang on. Okay. I also need a spot for my notes here. So technology is pretty good in a lot of ways. This is the case in point with that. In a lot of ways, it makes our lives better and easier. And the things that we used to have to do physically, we can do digitally, and it makes our lives a lot easier in a lot of ways. But if we're being real, there's a lot of ways that technology has not been so great. It's not so great when your computer crashes the night before your big papers due, right? It's great when you get to connect with your friends and you get to send texts and you get to be on social media and see what's going on in everybody's lives. You can post about your life, but it's not so great when you're posting what you did for the weekend and you realize that everybody else was at a party you weren't invited to. Technology is not so great when you're just kind of innocently clicking on some links and it takes you to some page that's R-rated and you did not intend to be there, right? Technology has its downfalls, and unless we're actually prepared and equipped to deal with those, then we could be presented with some opportunities that if we haven't decided in advance what we're going to do when those things happen, we might fall into some temptation, we might fall into some things and some habits and some thinking that we didn't mean to. We just kind of fell into. There's a lot of people you talk to, they believe what they believe because they fell into those beliefs, because it's either what their parents taught them or it's what they learned at school, or it's what they researched on their own when they had questions. And sometimes if we're not careful, when we fall into just beliefs that we're presented with and we don't use critical thought, it shapes us. It shapes us in ways that maybe God didn't intend. And so technology can be really great, but it can also have its downfalls when it's not used appropriately. And here's the thing. In this whole series where we're talking about God's design and intention for our sexuality, if we're not careful, technology will shape the way that we see that, the way our perspective is on this thing, and the way that we believe it's supposed to be used. And here's the reality. I understand that many of you, when it comes to this topic, you've not been presented with an opportunity where you have to choose what you believe, where you have to make the decision what you're going to do based on what you believe. Some of you might be grossed out by this topic. It might make you uncomfortable, especially if you're watching this with your parents right now. Who knows? Maybe this conversation you just kind of want to steer away from altogether. Maybe for some of you, you want to have this conversation, but you don't know how to initiate it because it feels weird and it feels awkward. For some of you, you don't even want to think about it, and that's totally cool too. But here's the reality. When it comes to sex, there is so much more to it than just the physical act. And technology plays a huge role in how we participate in it, how we understand it, how we see it. It changes our views on it. In fact, one of the biggest ways that sex can show up in our lives is through technology. Technology has a way of giving us access to things that we otherwise wouldn't have access to if it weren't for technology, whether we're looking for it or not. Those not so appropriate photos that show up on your Explore page, those not dressed photos or videos that were sent to you on Snapchat, videos you can stumble on YouTube, maybe even that show that you were watching on Netflix that you didn't know had that scene in it, but now you know, or maybe you did know. Or maybe it's even those super sexualized advertisements that show up when you're just online. We all know how easy it is to come across things that are sexual in nature whenever we use technology. The age of first exposure goes younger and younger all the time. And it's not because we're looking for it. It's because it's there. And sometimes without even trying, we just stumble across it. So if you don't know how you're going to act or what you're going to do in advance before you're exposed to those things, you might not make the best decision moving forward. You might not be prepared to handle what is out there. And that's just it. Sometimes technology can expose us to things that we're not ready to handle. And like I said at the beginning of this video, we're going to get into more of the issues with pornography and stuff next week. But this week, I really want to just talk to you about how technology can sometimes make us feel like we have this superpower, that maybe what we experience digitally isn't rooted in real life. And that's just it. Sometimes technology makes us believe that we can talk or act in certain ways behind a screen that we never would in real life if we were sitting with actual people. Here's what I mean. Sometimes without even realizing it, we can come to our computers, we can come to our phones, and as soon as we open them, as soon as we go to Instagram, as soon as we go to texting, as soon as we interact with people at all, when we open that screen, it's almost like shields up. It's almost like, okay, I'm not in real life right now. And I know that somewhere in our minds we know that this is somehow rooted in reality, but sometimes we have the courage that we wouldn't have if we were actually in reality. And behind that shield, we can ask for things, ask for photos, ask for things that we wouldn't ask for if we were actually talking to that person in person. We can say something in the comments that we would never actually say in real life. We can have the boldness and the courage to send that text to that person that we never would have said if we had been in person. And sometimes we can post a photo posing in a certain way, in a certain outfit that we know will get us a lot of attention, a lot of comments, a lot of likes. But if people were in the room watching us pose in that way, dressed in that way, we would be really uncomfortable and we wouldn't follow through with it. Technology sometimes gives us the shield where we think we have this superpower that what we're doing isn't actually rooted in reality. And that can be very dangerous if we're not prepared for how we're going to deal with that. If we're honest, what we do behind screens just doesn't always feel like it's reality. But here's the problem. It is reality. What you do behind the screen digitally is a reflection of the real you. And what happens on a screen doesn't just stay on a screen. It affects you, it affects others, it affects real life when we leave the screen. And if we're not careful, technology can open the door for us to use sex in a way that God did not intend or design, and it can be harmful for us and others, and it can wreck our relationships. And I don't want that for you. I want you to be able to succeed when it comes to your life, when it comes to your relationships. And that's why it's just so important that we actually talk this through, because for many of you, this is a part of your normal everyday lives. You're presented with this stuff, and sometimes you're not presented with the tools of how to deal with it. So I think a verse that really applies for us today comes from Paul. Paul was this converted Christian that went from killing Christians to now being one of the most leading Christians in the entire world. And he shaped and formed the early church. He's a lot of the reason that we're here today. And here's what he says when it comes to this. I'm going to read it because I don't have it memorized. He says, "Run from sexual sin. No other sin so clearly affects the body as this one does. For sexual immorality is a sin against your own body. Don't you realize that your body is the temple of the Holy Spirit who lives in you and was given to you by God? You do not belong to yourself, for God bought you with a high price. So you must honor God with your body." And notice that Paul's not saying to run from sex, because we talked about last week, sex is good, it's powerful, God created it for a reason. But that reason is between a man and woman in marriage, under that commitment. And so when he says, he's not saying run from sex, he's saying run from sexual sin. And here's the thing, just like all the stuff we've talked about already, sexual sin, sexual immorality, when we say immorality, it's just anything that's outside of God's original design for sex. But anything outside of that, we're just going to call it sexual immorality, okay? The thing about sexual sin and sexual immorality is that it has so much more to do with than just sex itself. And Paul tells us to run from those things. And yes, that includes sex that's accessed through technology. The reality is that technology can give us the opportunity to talk about, get noticed for, or even push the boundaries when it comes to sexual things that we never would do if we were in real life. And we can interact with all those things without actually having sex. And that's why this is so much bigger than just the physical act itself. Paul's instructing us to run from these things. And he's not doing it to spoil our fun. He's doing it because he knows that that's what's best for you. And that's the way that God designed it to be. Maybe if he was writing this today, Paul would have said, instead of running from sexual sin, he would have been more specific. And he might have said, run from that desire to post that picture on Instagram that draws attention to you sexually. Run from that desire to leave that sexual comment on somebody else's post. Run from the desire to ask for somebody to send that to you, and run from actually sending it. And let me tell you, if you believe that you have to send those things in order to get the love and attention that you desire from someone, you're looking in the wrong place. That person does not truly care about you. And you have so much more to offer than just that. And let me say another thing as it pertains to this, because I want to make it clear that you are not responsible for what is sent to you when you didn't ask for it. You are not responsible for receiving something you didn't ask for. What you are responsible for is what you do with it. That's up to you. And that's why it's so important to be prepared and have this conversation so that you can be prepared for when something does present itself to you. You know how you're going to respond and how you're going to act when it comes to that. And you can be prepared how to protect yourself in that kind of situation. So why is this so important to talk about how to honor God with the way that we handle sex in the real world, but also in the digital world? Well, I've got 3 things for you to close this up. One is in review, just remember that what happens digitally is happening in real life. What happens online is real life. So don't act like you've got some kind of shield that protects you from the consequences of whatever it is that you're trying to say or do or post or whatever. So that's number 1, remembering that what happens online is real life. Secondly, we have to ask ourselves the questions why. Just pause and ask why. Why am I about to post this? Why am I about to say this? Why am I about to send this? If I don't get the reaction that I'm hoping for by sending this or by saying this, then how will I feel? Will I feel embarrassed? Will I feel ashamed? Whatever it is, pause and ask yourself the question why. And thirdly, I love this one. We need to run everything that we do online through the secret filter. Let me explain. If you're about to post or say or look up anything that you would not want to be known by others, if you want what your activity online looks like to be kept a secret, if it's something that you don't want your small group leader or your parents or me or somebody else, the people important to you in your life to know about, then maybe it's not God's intention or design. Maybe that's His Spirit convicting you and nudging you in a different direction. We need to run everything through our secret filter. Does it pass the secret filter test? Is it something that we don't mind if it gets out? Is it something that we want to keep secret? That's a good filter to run your decisions through. So in conclusion today on our very first digital online service, technology is good and technology is powerful. So with that in mind, I want you to think of this one question. What is one way that technology might not actually be good for me right now? Maybe it's something that you haven't crossed the line with yet, but you know the temptation is there, you know the opportunity is there. Maybe it's something that has happened and you're trying to not let it happen again. Whatever it is, what's one way that technology is not good for you right now? Hey, I love you guys so much. I hope you are staying safe. I hope you are staying healthy. And hopefully we'll meet together soon. But if not, until then, let's keep in touch online. Follow us on Instagram. Parents, follow us on Facebook. We put a lot of important information out there. And subscribe to us on YouTube here. We drop our messages from every week on this channel, and we also filter in and sprinkle in some other bonus content from time to time as well. And so stay engaged with us. We love connecting with you guys. Hope you have a fantastic week, and love you guys. See ya.